The lawyer's voice cracked like dry autumn leaves underfoot as he read the final line. To Jackson, my beloved grandson, I leave not the oak dining table where we shared secrets over pie, but this suitcase, packed with the truths I couldn't say aloud, and a one-way ticket to the city that will set you free. Jackson's breath hitched, the room's antique clock ticking louder than his pulse, while his aunt's gasp sliced the air like a knife through wedding cake. In that suffocating parlor in suburban Ohio, surrounded by the ghosts of his grandmother's Victorian furniture, now willed to cousins who sneered at his lifestyle, Jackson realized the inheritance wasn't just a slight. It was a lifeline hurled from beyond the grave, daring him to grab it before the family eulogy turned to erasure. Jackson Harper had always known his grandmother, Eleanor, was the quiet rebel in a family tree choked with conservative branches. Born in 1942 in the Rust Belt heart of Cleveland, she'd outlived 2 husbands, a son, Jackson's father, and enough small-town scandals to fill a gossip column. But to the world, she was the pillar. Bake sale queen, church auxiliary president, the woman who starched collars and silenced whispers. To Jackson, she was the one who'd slip him a dog-eared copy of Giovanni's Room under the table at Thanksgiving, her arthritic fingers brushing his with a wink that said, "You're safe here, kiddo, even if it's just us two." That wink felt a lifetime away now, as Jackson knelt on the faded Persian rug in Eleanor's old house, the air thick with the scent of mothballs and lemon polish. The reading had ended an hour ago, the relatives scattering like crows from a scarecrow. His uncle claiming the grandfather clock, his cousins divvying up the mahogany sideboards and velvet settees like spoils of war. Family heirlooms stay in the family. His Aunt Miriam had huffed, her eyes flicking to Jackson with the same disdain she'd reserved for his coming-out announcement 5 years back. Some things just don't fit the furniture. He'd bitten his tongue then, as always, the metallic tang of restraint familiar as the burn of cheap whiskey. But now, alone in the dim parlor, Jackson dragged the battered leather suitcase from the corner where the lawyer had left it, its brass latches dulled by decades of travel. The ticket was tucked into the handle's freight strap, a crisp American Airlines voucher for a flight from Cleveland Hopkins to San Francisco International, departing in 3 days. No note, no explanation, just the date circled in Eleanor's looping script, and a single word scrawled beneath, "Go." His hands trembled as he unclasped the locks, the click echoing like a gunshot in the empty house. Inside, no gold or jewels, no deeds to hidden properties. Instead, layers of memory unfolded like a forbidden scrapbook. A stack of yellowed letters tied with faded ribbon, photos curling at the edges, a silver locket engraved with E and J, "Forever yours." The first letter was addressed to his grandfather, dated 1965, the year Jackson would be born. "Dearest Tom, I saw a boy today in the park, holding hands with another under the oaks. They looked happy, unashamed. If our Jamie ever loves like that, promise me we'll love him back. The world's cruel enough without us adding to it." Jackson's throat tightened. Jamie, his father, had died young. A heart attack at 45, leaving behind a wife who prayed away her son's deviancy, and a boy who learned to hide his first crush on the high school quarterback behind lockers and lies. Eleanor had been the buffer, the one who'd drive him to the city for errands that were really afternoons in smoky gay bars, her station wagon idling outside while he danced with strangers who saw him, really saw him. "The furniture's just wood, Jax," she'd say on those rides home, her voice gravelly from Virginia Slims. "It's the stories that hold us up. And yours? Honey, yours is just starting." He traced the locket's inscription, popping it open to find a tiny photo of Eleanor at 20, radiant in a flapper dress, arm in arm with a woman whose smile mirrored his own. Sharp, secretive, alive. Aunt Josie? The family myth had always painted her as the spinster who loved cats too much. But here, in the suitcase's velvet lining, was the truth. A love letter from Josie, postmarked 1940. "My darling Ellie, the stars over Lake Erie taste like your kiss, salty and endless. When the war takes you away, remember, our hearts don't salute flags." Tears blurred the ink as Jackson pieced it together. Eleanor hadn't just known about him. She'd lived it, buried it under layers of propriety for a world that would have burned her at the stake. The suitcase wasn't rejection, it was revelation. A map to a life she denied herself so he wouldn't have to. But as the front door creaked open downstairs, voices rising like smoke signals. Miriam and the cousins, back to settle the rest. Jackson slammed the case shut, heart pounding. Freedom had a price, and it started with facing the family that had already half buried him. Down in the kitchen, the air hummed with forced cheer, the chrome-legged table now Miriam's by decree. "Jackson, dear," she said, pouring coffee into bone china cups that had been Eleanor's pride. "We were just talking about the estate sale. That old trunk in the attic? Full of junk, probably. You wouldn't want it." Her smile was a rictus, eyes darting to the suitcase he dragged down like a shield. "It's not junk," he said, voice steadier than he felt, setting it by his feet. "It's mine. Grandma left it to me." Cousin Brett, all buzzcut and beer gut, snorted from his perch on the counter. "A suitcase? What, she pack you some rainbow flags? Figures. Always had a soft spot for your situation." The word hung, laced with venom, and the room's temperature dropped 10 degrees. Jackson's fists clenched, nails biting palms. 5 years ago, when he'd come out at Uncle Ray's funeral, "I'm gay, Mom, and I can't pretend anymore," the fallout had been biblical. His mother, Evelyn, had wept for days, dragging him to pastors who promised deliverance. Cousins whispered faggot at reunions. His father's grave became a no-fly zone for that kind of talk. Only Eleanor had pulled him aside in the cemetery, pressing a handkerchief into his hand. "Wipe those tears, sugar. Your grandpa Tom?" He had eyes for the mill foreman back in 52. "Never said a word, but I knew. Love's love, Jackson. Don't let them furnish your soul with their hate." Now, echoing that ghost, he straightened. "The tickets to San Francisco. Grandma wanted me to go. Said it was time." Miriam's cup clattered into the saucer, coffee sloshing like spilled secrets. San Francisco? That den of sinners? Eleanor was losing her marbles at the end. Dementia, you know. She didn't mean it. She meant every word. Jackson shot back, the locket burning against his chest where he'd slipped it under his shirt. "Unlike the rest of you, who can't even look at me without checking for horns." The kitchen erupted. Brett lunging forward, Miriam clutching pearls, Evelyn materializing in the doorway like a specter, her face ashen. "Jackson Michael Harper, you will not speak to your family this way. Your grandmother built this home with blood and sweat, and you're throwing it away for what? A flight to fairyland?" "It's not throwing away," he whispered, voice cracking on the edge of rage. "It's claiming what's mine. She saw me when you all looked away." Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth, but her eyes, oh those eyes, held no sorrow, only the steel of denial. "We love you, son. But love doesn't mean enabling. Stay. Sell the ticket. Be normal." Normal. The word was a slap, reopening wounds Jax had stitched with bar fights and bad hookups. Night scrolling grinder in motel rooms off I-71. He tried, for her, for the family photos where he smiled like he meant it. But the suitcase mocked that lie, its contents a siren call to the Castro, to rainbow flags waving unashamed over hills that rolled like waves of possibility. "I can't," he said finally, grabbing the handle. "Not anymore." He was halfway to the door when Brett blocked him, arms crossed like a bouncer at a straight bar. "You walk out, you're done. No Christmas, no calls. Family's family, Jax. Blood don't bend." Jackson met his gaze, seeing not just the cousin who'd once shared comic books under porch lights, but the fear masquerading as fury. The same fear that had choked Eleanor into silence for 70 years. "Blood bends, Brett. It has to, or it breaks." He pushed past, the screen door slamming behind him like a full stop. Outside, the November sky hung low and bruised over the cul-de-sac, leaves skittering across lawns mowed to military precision. Jackson's truck, a '98 Ford Ranger with rust kissing the wheel wells, coughed to life, the suitcase wedged on the passenger seat like a co-pilot. As he peeled out, tires crunching gravel, the house shrank in the rearview, a monument to what he'd lost, and the first step toward what he might become. The drive to his apartment in downtown Cleveland was a blur of strip malls and steel mills belching smoke into the dusk. Jackson blasted Springsteen, Thunder Road, Eleanor's favorite, letting the sax wail over his sobs. By the time he hauled the suitcase up 3 flights of creaky stairs, the city's neon pulse throbbed through the thin walls. Distant sirens, laughter from the dive bar below, the grind of lives crammed into concrete dreams. His place was a shoebox. Peeling wallpaper, a futon that sagged like regret, posters of Marlon Brando and James Dean peeling at the corners. Home, for 3 years post-college, after he'd bailed on the family accounting firm for a barista gig at a queer coffee shop called the Bean Counter. It paid in caffeine and camaraderie, tips from drag queens and furtive glances from closeted dads. But tonight, unpacking the suitcase felt like defusing a bomb. Letter after letter spilled out. Eleanor's confessions to Josie, wartime promises scrawled on ration book scraps. A diary from 1978, when she'd volunteered at a Cleveland clinic for AIDS patients. Her entries raw with grief for men who died shunned. They remind me of us, Joe. Beautiful boys loving fierce in a world that stones them. And photos. Jackson at 12, gap-toothed grin beside Eleanor at the county fair. A faded Polaroid of her and Josie on a beach, hands intertwined, waves blurring their ankles. At the bottom, wrapped in tissue, a small wooden box. Inside, a man's wedding band, tarnished but true, and a note in Eleanor's hand, Tom's ring. He never wore it for me, but for the man he lost to Korea. Wear it for you, Jackson. Find your thunder. He slid it on, the metal cool against his knuckle, a vow heavier than any vow. Sleep came fitful, dreams tangled with ghosts. Eleanor dancing with Josie under disco lights, his father's disapproving frown melting into Brett's sneer. Morning broke gray, coffee bitter as he stared at the ticket on his fridge, magnetized beside a magnet from the Pride Parade. Love wins. Work dragged. Steaming lattes for hipsters who flirted obliviously, wiping counters while his phone buzzed with voicemails. Evelyn's pleas, Miriam's accusations. Come back. Think of your future. He deleted them, heart a war drum. That night, at the Bean Counter's open mic, he spotted him. Riley, the poet with ink-stained fingers and eyes like smoked quartz, reciting verses about boys who loved in basements during Reagan's reign. Riley's set ended with applause and Jackson, on break, bought him a whiskey neat. That last line. Hearts like hidden rivers, carving canyons in the dark. Your grandma. Riley's laugh was low, rumbling like thunder over the lake. Nah, my uncle. Died in '87, back when they called it the gay plague. You? Jackson hesitated. Then, mine just did. Left me a suitcase full of secrets and a ticket out. They talked till closing. Riley, 30. A graphic designer by day, activist by night, who'd fled a Baptist upbringing in Kentucky for Cleveland's gritty queer scene. His touch was electric. A brush of knees under the table. A shared cigarette on the fire escape where stars fought the city glow. San Francisco? Riley murmured, exhaling smoke rings. The Mecca. But Cleveland's got its own magic. Underground, yeah, but real. Jackson leaned in, the ring glinting under bar lights. Maybe I need both. Their first kiss tasted of bourbon and possibility. In the alley behind the shop, rain slicking their skin. Riley's hands framed Jackson's face, thumbs tracing jawlines like he was memorizing a map. Stay a while, he whispered. Let me show you the rivers. For 2 days, Jackson did. Mornings tangled in Riley's loft across the river. Exposed brick, canvases splashed with protest art, a bed that smelled of patchouli and fresh ink. Afternoons wandering the flats, hands laced, sharing stories. Riley's first love, a farm boy lost to conversion therapy. Jackson's hidden Polaroids of high school hookups in the boiler room. Nights at poetry slams, where Riley's words wrapped Jackson like a blanket, and Jackson read Eleanor's letters aloud, voice breaking on the tender parts. You're brave, Riley said one dawn, tracing the suitcase's scars with his fingertip. Most folks cling to the furniture. Jackson pulled him close, bodies aligning like puzzle pieces. Not me. Not anymore. But doubt crept in like fog off the lake. Evelyn called again, we're having a family meeting. About the will. Please, Jackson. He went, against Riley's warnings, driving back to the house under a sky spitting sleet. The parlor was a tribunal. Miriam presiding, Brett looming, cousins arrayed like jury. Evelyn stood, clutching a folder. We've contested the codicil. The suitcase, the ticket, its undue influence. Grandma was senile. Rage boiled, hot as radiator steam. Senile? She remembered every damn thing. Your affairs, Brett's DUIs, all the skeletons you stuffed in her closets. Miriam's slap was swift, a crack that echoed off the wainscoting. Ungrateful boy. We raised you better. Evelyn sobbed, but her voice was steel. "Sign this, Jackson. Renounce it. Stay, and we'll forget this nonsense." The pen hovered, traitorous. Family. Blood. The word normal whispered like a siren's song. But then he felt the ring, the locket's weight. Riley's text burning in his pocket. "Miss you. Come home." "No," he said, crumpling the paper. "You forget me. I won't." He fled again, but this time, the truck wouldn't start. Dead battery, fitting metaphor for the life he'd outgrown. Brett's truck idled outside, headlights accusatory. "Need a jump?" his cousin called, but the offer was barbed. Jackson walked, miles through slush, to Riley's door. Collapsing into those arms, he confessed the slap, the contest, the temptation. Riley held him, fierce. "They can't contest love. Pack with me. We'll drive Route 80 to the coast. Make the ticket our detour." They did, loading the suitcase into Riley's battered Subaru. Eleanor's secrets nestled beside Riley's sketchbooks. The road unspooled west. Pittsburgh's bridges glowing like veins. Indiana cornfields whispering under stars. Chicago's skyline a jagged promise. They made love in motels with neon vacancies, bodies mapping forgiveness. Argued over playlists. Riley's indie folk versus Jackson's classic rock. Shared silences where the only sound was tires on asphalt, hearts sinking to the rhythm. In Iowa, at a roadside diner, trouble found them. A trucker at the counter, eyes narrowing on their laced hands, muttered queers loud enough for the room. Riley stiffened, but Jackson, changed, ring-forged, met the glare. Yeah, and the fight spilled outside. Fists, slurs, the crack of bone on bone. Riley took a split lip shielding Jackson. Jackson landed a punch that split the trucker's brow. Cops came, warnings issued, but no arrests. Small-town mercy or indifference. Bruised and bleeding, they drove on, adrenaline forging something unbreakable. "You're my thunder," Jackson whispered that night, bandaging Riley's knuckles in a Super 8 room. Riley grinned through the swelling. "And you're the road." San Francisco rose like a mirage. Golden Gate veiled in mist, Haight Street alive with buskers and banners. The ticket unused, they crashed at a hostel in the Castro. Rainbow crosswalks, windows decked in pride flags. Jackson wandered alone first, suitcase in tow, to the LGBT History Museum, where Eleanor's era stared back. Photos of Stonewall, AIDS quilts, women like her and Josie, loving in shadows. He lit a candle for her there, whispering thanks. That night, Riley proposed. Not with rings, but words. "Build with me, Jackson. Not furniture, but a life." But dawn brought the call. Evelyn, voice hollow. Miriam's pushing probate. They want the house sold, everything liquidated, including the suitcase. Rage, then resolve. Jackson booked the flight anyway, not away from Riley, but to return armed. "One last stand," he told his lover, kissing knuckles still bruised. For her. Back in Cleveland, the family meeting was a farce. Lawyers droning, Miriam triumphant. Jackson burst in, suitcase open on the table, letters fanning like cards in a con. "Read them," he demanded. "All of you. See who she really was." Evelyn recoiled. Brett scoffed. But as the word spilled, Eleanor's love for Josie, Tom's secret, her pleas for Jamie's son, cracks formed. Miriam wept, first. Then Uncle Ray, silent till now, admitted his own hidden youth. "She knew. Told me once after your dad died. Said to love you fierce, or I'd regret it." The room fractured. Accusations, apologies, the raw unraveling of myths. Evelyn reached for him, tentative. "Forgive us." "Not yet," Jackson said, but softer. "But maybe." He left with the suitcase intact, the will upheld, Eleanor's clarity proven in ink. Flying back, the ring glinted in the porthole light, San Francisco sprawling below like open arms. Riley waited at SFO, signs scrawled, Thunder Road ahead. They drove to a tiny flat in the Mission, walls bare but for photos. Eleanor and Josie, Jackson and Riley, futures unfurnished but full. Months blurred. Jackson found work at a nonprofit, archiving queer histories. Riley's art bloomed in galleries themed on hidden loves. Family trickled west. Evelyn's first visit awkward, but her hug real. Brett's postcard, grudging. Missed the pie. And you? One evening on Twin Peaks, city lights winking like fireflies, Jackson slipped the second ring. Riley's design, etched with rivers onto his finger. Thunder? He asked. Riley pulled him close. Rode forever. In the end, the furniture gathered dust in Ohio, relics of a life unlived. But the suitcase. It sat open on their shelf, stories spilling into a home built not of wood, but whispers. Human, flawed, eternally true.